22 June 1941, the roar of artillery and the rumble of tanks marked the end of the unlikely pact between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. As he has before, Adolf Hitler unleashes his Blitzkrieg on a nation with which he is supposedly at peace. Known as Operation Barbarossa, the German offensive into Russia is the largest in history. 3 million men pour through massive holes punched by panzer divisions in the Russian defenses. The German offensive is divided into 3 wings. The main thrust of the attack is given to Field Marshal von Bach's Army Group Center. They are to drive east in a giant pincers movement towards Smolensk, entrapping and crushing large elements of the Red Army. With this done, they are to push on to Moscow and raise the Nazi banner high above the walls of the Kremlin. As in Poland and France, the German Blitzkrieg routs the Russian defenders, driving them back in utter confusion. On 29 June, Guderian's and General Hot's forces meet up near Minsk, encircling more than 40 Russian divisions and taking over 300,000 prisoners. In the south, Lvov is overrun, and the 1st Panzer Group is already making advances on Kiev. On 3 July, Stalin broadcasts a message to the entire nation. He says the current conflict is a people's war, not just one for the Red Army. He calls for a scorched earth policy, leaving nothing for the advancing Germans. By 5 August, the Army Group Center has encircled over 700,000 Soviet troops at Smolensk. On 12 August, Hitler issues Directive 34, ordering army groups north and south to continue their drives to Leningrad and the Crimea. But he also orders, against the advice of his generals, that Army Group Center halt and assist the other forces. The German generals want to continue the drive for Moscow, virtually ensuring its fall before the Russian winter sets in. Russian roads, bad enough in favorable weather, become impassable in snow. The generals realize that the key to their success is mobility. Without it, they fear, the offensive will bog down and they will find themselves fighting in an environment for which they are totally unprepared. On 30 August, Army Group North cuts the last railroad link between Leningrad and the rest of the Soviet Union. The next day, they are within artillery range of the city itself. In the south, Guderian, who is driven south after the encirclement at Smolensk, joins in the assault on Kiev. On 12 September, his forces link up with General Kleist's, entrapping over 600,000 Soviet troops 100 miles west of the city. For all the good news, the German General Staff is most preoccupied with weather. The first snow falls on the Eastern Front. On 19 September, after losing 500,000 men in its defense, the Russians are forced to cede Kiev to Army Group South. For the Germans, the victory is bittersweet at best. The fierce Russian defense of the city has reduced the Nazi forces by over 100,000. One German general notes that, unlike the Poles and the French, the Russians are fighting to the last man. On 30 September, Guderian's 2nd Panzer Army, which has moved back north, begins the drive east from Moscow. He is joined on 2 October by the 3rd and 4th Panzer Groups and the 2nd, 4th, and 9th Armies. Though the advance on Moscow continues, the closer the Germans get to the city, the tougher the fighting becomes. Accustomed to winning staggering victories at little cost, they are now bogged down and taking heavy casualties. By mid-November, with hard winter descending around them, German morale is at an all-time low. Their soldiers do not have proper clothing to protect them from the cold, and their equipment is becoming less and less reliable. Winter may well be Russia's best ally. The Red Army, reeling from the speed of the German advance, now has time to regroup. They permit the Germans to advance slowly on Moscow while building their reserve forces on the outer flanks. On 2 December, forward German units advance to within sight of the Kremlin. Their divisions are at half strength. Their men are demoralized and frostbitten, and their equipment is failing miserably in the harsh Russian winter. Their long drive stalls. On 6 December, the Russian hammer drops. Along a 500-mile front around Moscow, the Soviets launch a massive counteroffensive. Devised by Marshal Georgy Zhukov, the Russian plan is to cut through the panzer groups on the wings of Army Group Center, then isolate and destroy it. The overextended, weakened German forces crumble under the onslaught of the fresh Russian troops. Hitler, for the first time, sees his mighty Wehrmacht stagger. Facing a rejuvenated Red Army, the German High Command looks forward with trepidation to the long Russian winter.